like that's a really great spot in town too, to pull out a little bit from maybe Plover area as well. Yeah, food and drinks. Right?
It's something a little more fun, a little more fresh. Just looking for some new food to the area. Not new, not like reinventing the wheel food, but a little more flavorful.
Yeah.
Good. No issues with the liquor license?
Nope, no issues at all. I will say it is the last one,
Then
just
I'll-
FYI.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the Class B fermented malt beverage license for 1716 Baker Street.
I'll second the motion. Any other questions? I'll put it to vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. So moved. Congratulations.
Well, looking forward to the new business.
Yeah.
So you still get to go to county council, which is on the 20th, and then we'll be in the council chambers.
Okay.
So,
Great.
and then after that, you're approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was easy.
Good luck with everything.
We're good.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
You're welcome.
Good luck, see you guys. Thank you, don't be like us.
You too. Item number 3, consider a request from the fire department to use the insurance money from a Ford pickup settlement last October to be used to purchase a Dodge half-ton crew cab to replace that vehicle.
So last year, one of our vehicles got in a motor vehicle crash. Actually, it wasn't their fault. Somebody blew a stop sign, T-boned them. We had a settlement on that right away. We put an order in for a new Ford F-150 pickup. As of 2 weeks ago, when we were looking at what Paul did through Johnson Jeep, that it still didn't have a VIN number. And when I called, they said you probably won't need to see one until 2023 anyhow. So I asked the mayor at that time if we could go ahead and purchase one from there. He said that would be fine. I talked with Tim. He said we really should ask finance to move that from the 2022 because it was issued in 2022 to 2023. So basically what it amounts to is what they quoted us with the government rate, which we're getting back again since COVID's done. Tim, what we figured we gotta take like $1,000 or somewhere around that out of the vehicle count. So the rest of it is covered by the insurance money that was allocated.
Okay.
Right, we received $47,380 insurance proceeds for the replacement of that vehicle last year in 2021. That was put into the fire department vehicle replacement account, and that was carried forward as our carried forward resolution. However, that resolution states that anything over $10,000 that's not enumerated in the department's budget, it has to come to finance and council approval. Anything 10,000, 2,500 to 10,000, the mayor can approve and a carryover, and anything 0 to 2,500, the department head, and that's why we're bringing it to the finance committee, because it exceeded that 10,000 threshold. But the money was received last year and carried forward into the appropriation of 2022.
And I believe Paul had mentioned both, had this discussion with, I don't know if it was finance or council previously about, these purchasing of a couple of these vehicles, being that they're out so far that if you go through another dealership, you get them a little quicker.
Yeah, actually Johnson, I asked him again when I called him last week. I said we would have to come in front of here first. He told us it's still about 8 to 9 weeks we can get a vehicle from, so, which is a considerable difference.
So in the end, we're not asking for a new vehicle, we're replacing one that was destroyed last year.
Right.
And so the $1,000 that we take out, is that gonna impact our future purchases of vehicles?
No, I mean, we have, we put aside X amount of dollars. I do believe in the vehicle, it's 38,000.
30,000, something like that. I think it's 36.
36,750
Yep.
for the replacement of fire department vehicles. So,
Good.
the 1,000 that above and beyond the insurance proceeds would come out of that account. So.
Jay, questions?
No.
Dean, questions? I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the new vehicle from the proceeds of the settlement of the old vehicle.
Second.
Very good.
All right. Any other?
Oh, I was gonna say, we have currently 215,000 in that account, so.
All right. Any other questions, concerns? Move to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. So moved.
I do have a question for you, Tim. Do we have to wait for this to pass council before I can order the truck, or?
I mean, theoretically, yes, I mean,
Okay.
because it's, you know, this is a recommendation to the
Alright,
full
well,
council,
it's
so.
only a couple weeks away, so.
Yeah.
Alright.
Item 4, review and consider approval of a request from Insight Telecom Company for a 10-foot wide permanent utility easement along the existing retaining wall on the east side of Robinson Park to install and maintain new fiber optic lines. Insight is offering a compensation of $2,000 for this permanent utility easement in Robinson Park.
So I have a little bit of background
Yep,
information
thanks.
I can share with the committee. So we've been working with MyTech Services, who's doing the, I guess, the preparations for the Insight Telecom company to provide citywide fiber optic installations. Largely, all of their installations are going in the right of way, which we review and permit with any necessary conditions. One area in particular is by Robinson Park, where the utility was going to have complications staying within the right of way, which then pushed them into Robinson Park property. So that's kind of the background for the permanent easement and, you know, bringing it to this committee. We'll also be presenting it at the Parks and Rec Commission prior to the next council meeting. The fee that's being proposed, we've researched that, seems to be based upon what we would normally see for a permanent easement rate per square foot. So there's nothing there that seems to be out of the ordinary.
Joe, that fee is a one-time?
It's a one-time fee, yes. So there would be a permanent easement that would, you know, encumber the east side of the property, approximately, well, it varies in relationship to the retaining wall along the highway, but it's parallel to the right-of-way, which is 27 feet off of the right-of-way. But a 10-foot wide easement, it currently doesn't impact any trees, as far as we can tell, and based on everything that we've been working with them on, don't see any issues with recommending approval of the easement.
Just a couple of questions. So is this underground or is this on the wires above?
It's all underground.
It's all underground.
Yep.
So
So they'll do directional bore through the easement area, and so every so many 100 feet they'll have an excavation, a small pit area, where they'll do their next boring location and polling location from.
And Insight is contracted through the city or contracted
Nope.
through?
They're a telecommunication utility in the state of Wisconsin. I think they're out of the Green Bay area, and they've hired MyTech to do some of the administrative preparations to get permits and things in order for their work.
And not that it matters, but they're in direct competition with, say, Solaris putting all their fiber optic in? Is it the same concept, or we don't really know in terms of what their fiber
Yeah.
optic is for?
They are routing their fiber optic lines to cell towers, existing cell towers. I don't know who owns those cell towers that they're going to.
Mhm.
Beyond that, I don't know who their direct customers are.
So we, as a city, say you can come on in and they contract with whoever they need to in order to bring their fiber optic in or whatever they're bringing in. But for this park, it's a city property, so they're asking us for the easement to put it under the ground in the park.
Yeah, because they're a public utility, they have a right to install their public utility in the road right away. But once they get off onto private property, I mean, the city property is still public, but it's not public right away. That now the city has some discretion as far as do we allow it, don't we allow it? So I mean, one of the options available to the committee would be to not allow the easement. That's always an option.
Well, I'm not saying that, I'm just asking more out of just curiosity, I guess. I mean, seeing all this fiber optic come in, it's
Yeah.
really good for our community. I'm just curious as to who it affects and who gets to use it and
Sure.
what it plays, if we're gonna give them the So it's you said it was a public utility?
Yes.
The site is public?
Yep. Well, they're, a public telecommunications utility company.
So it's not a private company, it's a.
Well, they're
publicly-
providing a public service. They would be governed by, I believe, by the Public Service Commission.
Alright. Alright, I'm done with questions. Dean, you got questions? Jay,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman?
anyone else?
One question, how long of, do you think they're gonna be working in that area? Month? Longer?
That's a good question. I don't know the specifics, but I guess based on the other progress that they've had through town, a month is probably a reasonable time frame to be in and out of there.
Okay, thank you.
For Tim, so this $2,000, does that automatically go back to the park? Do we have to designate it to the park? Can we designate it to the park?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, usually when we get kind of like sale of property or something, it just kind of goes into sale of property and, you know, it just kind of goes into the general fund and used for other purposes unless it's specifically identified. But, you know, the council has the full, this committee and the council has full right to like say, we'll designate that since it's in parkland. If you wanted to put it in the park outlay, you could certainly designate that.
Seems to me that it's going through the park, the money might as well go back into the park.
Good. Tom?
Yeah, just, maybe not major, but just a couple questions. And the right of way is only, 10 feet, whatever. Doesn't seem like a lot, which is not, but it's, park property there. The other thing that goes with it, and, I guess, the easement being, a permanent easement. And so that they have governance over it, I guess. Not that necessarily up there to the wall that the, park would do anything with it, but is there anything that we'd be putting ourselves in as far as the right of way or whatever in case it, say they wanted to expand the size of that highway? I mean, it's in it'd be a permanent easement, so we're, 2,000 seems to me low, being a permanent one. The other one is just a question of, I guess, should it be permanent? But, with what they're doing, obviously, I can see why they want it permanent. So
Right.
you gotta look at all of it, but, so it's just, a couple questions I just wanted to lay out, ask about,
Yeah, I was thinking kind of similar thoughts. So permanent easement, Joe was meaning that's, in the end, that's their property now?
Well, it's still city property, but the easement provides to them the express privilege to, for the purposes of and in order to construct, reconstruct, modify, supplement, maintain, operate, and/or remove facilities for the transmission of signals used in the provision of communication, video, and/or information services, cables, wires, pedestals, other above-ground cable or wire enclosures, marker post signs. So they, the city would be granting them those privileges in that defined area in the park on a permanent basis.
So what I heard you kind of I think is what I was hearing is whatever, we don't necessarily want to put anything on top of it. Anything
Yeah,
that could put it in danger.
I think we could still plant trees and those sorts of things, although if they need to come in and maintain their facility and excavate things in that 10-foot easement area, and they need to remove vegetation to do that, then, the easement would allow them to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly, to Tom's point on the dollar amount, if it does seem low, I mean, the city could request a higher dollar amount if, in order to, if that seemed more reasonable.
Well, I hate to, these guys are making some serious money when they would be putting it in if they weren't, making money off it. 2,000 seems, I don't know, like, it's always the, you don't wanna be greedy, but at the same time, you want it to be fair. So where did did you said you guys kinda came up with the $2,000?
Well, so they had asked us if we had experience with any other easements in the city and what those unit costs were. We had shared, the unit cost for the easement that was, I don't know if that was approved this year or last year in Rapids East Commerce Center. And that was, they had an appraisal done with it, and so they had some justification for their numbers. The city assessor reviewed that report and those numbers at that time. And so that's largely the basis for the value that they're providing to the city.
So in the end then, if we were to counter offer, we'd have to have some justification behind it? Or we just make a counter offer?
Yeah. If the loss of the park space and, you know, what the city may or may not wanna do in the future, you know, if that's of a certain dollar value, that's higher than 2,000, you know, that.
Well, always comes down to what is it worth to them? Are they, I'm assuming this is a pretty big line that's coming through, cause it's feeding.
Yeah,
We don't
I'm
know
not-
this
I'm not
diameter of
sure,
it.
no.
Hmm.
Typically, though, fiber optic is.
It's pretty small.
It's not like a water main or a sewer pipe.
I'm just thinking of the
2-inch conduit.
the
is
old copper
probably-
that used to come through to do the same job. I don't know how many fiber optic wires they need in order to do the same job as copper.
Yeah.
So then, to Tom's point, what do we do if, we become more of a main thoroughfare and the bridge has to expand? Do we renegotiate with them, or do we need all that laid out and ahead of time?
It would have to be reviewed at that time based upon where that utility is situated amongst, you know, any foundations or bridge structure or whatever the case might be, or fill material that's being placed above it. Largely, it's a utility relocation with the project then if it's in the way.
So more than likely, Joe, if that bridge was to expand, let's say to add a lane or whatever, it would fall within that utility, it would fall within that easement then anyways, or within the right of way, correct?
It may or may not.
Yeah.
It all depends on what that design is. And
We're already looking at a 2-lane or a 4-lane road coming through there, 2 lanes in each direction. Tom, do you think that we're gonna grow into LA?
Well,
No.
just, you know, no.
Yeah.
Just some thoughts I had, you know,
Yeah,
like,
no.
there had been any, you know,
I hear what you're
we've
saying.
given up by the permanent easement, and
Yeah.
if they wanted to change, you know, if the road was to be redone at some point in time, if they wanted to move it, I guess that was in
Right.
my mind. It's not, maybe not necessarily make it 6 lanes, but
Right.
who knows what it will grow up to be, but, if they wanted to shift it, you know, to the east.
Right, right. So again, I guess the
But
question.
then again, it's parkland, as far as that goes.
Yeah.
For the-
So when things happen in the future, if they have the easement and the control over it, governance over it, we just come back to the negotiating table and let them know what's going on and try to work things out, or?
yeah, so I mean, if we have a future project with the highway that requires utility relocation, you know, that's all, the proposed improvements to the road are presented to the utility companies, puts them on notice, hey, this is the project, look at your stuff and what the impacts are, and is it anything that you need to relocate? If it is, where you're relocating to, and what's the effort to do that, and then that information gets coordinated with the project, and you know, it gets worked out through the process.
Yeah, okay.
Amen.
Yep.
Well, and also to consider if there would be any shift, anything in the right of way currently will have to be shifted to the new right of way. So you're gonna deal with that anyways if there's a road shift, but I do agree with Tom though that for an easement in perpetuity, $2,000 does seem pretty cheap. Cause they are we can't do anything with that forever as long as it's there.
I mean, to me, if,
Not a lot, yeah.
is there any more questions? So, my understanding on the easement is we have everything that's going to go into the agreement of the easement that says in the future, this is how we're handling any changes that are gonna come along?
Well, they have, with the easement that's put together, I mean, it outlines the use of that easement, and then it also, you know, what's agreed to, you know, as far as restoring any of the property, what the activities are, you know, what happens with tree trimming and brush removal. So there's a finite list of things that are agreed upon in the easement. As far as future changes that would impact what's proposed in here, that would all be something that would be reviewed in the future. You know, if they need to relocate because of something, well then, this specific easement would have to be null and void, or, you know, something else figured out with it.
So all this stuff between you and legal, it's kind of standard practice, like what's happening is a normal situation?
Yeah, I mean, the terms of the agreement, the utility easement, it's all pretty standard. It's more so dollar amount and location.
Okay.
You know, those are the big things, that it does impact city property and not right of way. And, you know, that's why we're bringing it to the committee.
Okay. Any other questions on it?
I was just gonna concur, I think the 2,000 seems really minimal. I'm sure they think they're getting a pretty good deal on that.
So, okay, so when it comes to the easement and everything else, we're okay, so the only question seems to be the money, and we could just, in my experience, you just go kinda high and either they'll walk away and say, we'll find a different place, or they'll say, well, they'll come back and we'll pay this much for it. And we come to the middle somewhere, so.
Sure.
I'm for starting out at 15 and just see what they say. I don't know if that's, what do you guys think? It's just business. In the end, they'll come back and say, yeah, we're not gonna pay that, but we're willing to pay this to put it in, so.
Because we don't need the easement through the park.
Yeah, if it doesn't, it's no skin off our back. I mean, we're doing them the favor, and they're gonna make a lot of money when it comes down to getting that stuff through and in, so. In the end, maybe that's even too little, but you never know, and you don't wanna sound too greedy, so. Dean, Jay, what do you guys think on that?
I'd say a number like that is not unreasonable. To start with.
Then I'll make a motion to approve the utility to Robinson Park for Insight, $15,000, with that money being dedicated to a park project, or to Robinson Park.
What if they come back and say, hey, we'll do 10,000? You wanna delegate that to Joe as, that he could, or does that have to come back to finance again for another approval? Or if they say 12,000?
I'd say, my opinion is anything over 7.5 should be accepted.
Guess what they're gonna offer?
I'm looking at coming in the middle somewhere, so let's see what they say, and Joe, sorry guys.
Okay, and then, so within the motion, I will
Yeah.
give Joe the authority to keep the process moving.
They're like, no, it's sweet. You're welcome, guys.
Wanna play poker later or anything?
I'm sure they'll go higher now.
Do we have a second?
I'll second. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Item number 5, consider for approval a revision to the policy governing the procedures and guidelines for the acquisition, transfer, and disposal of City of Wisconsin Rapids mass transit vehicles.
Okay, basically what we're doing is based on, you know, what happens is a lot of times, you know, Jim Brown from River Cities Cabs, you know, when we need to replace vehicles and things like that, we'll go out on the auction sites and use market to find, you know, acceptable vehicles that we can use for mass transit. And the policy dictated that anything 4,000 and under could be approved by him and also the finance department. Well, with the increase in, obviously, the value of used vehicles, it's becoming a lot harder to find anything in that 400,000 or less. So basically, he requested that that be raised from 4,000 to 7,000. And basically what happens is that, you know, through the mass transit grant, we buy vehicles every year, or try to buy vehicles every year through the grant, which is paid 80% by the federal mass transit grant. However, just like with every other department, there's lag times in trying to get these vehicles, so it's become even more incumbent upon us to try to find some used vehicles to supplement the cab fleet. So basically what it is this policy is just raising that from 4,000 to 7,000. And what happens is when we dispose of these vehicles that we either purchase new or use at the end of their useful life, we send them to auction or sell them off. And any proceeds that we get, we retain in this account to use to purchase things like that, or match the 20% local match on new vehicles. So basically all this policy is doing is just raising that threshold from 4,000 to 7,000 before it has to come back to the Finance and Council.
Any thoughts?
Sure, so do you have any idea what we've got what's in that account now?
I can look here. Should have had that.
I'm assuming they're looking to replace vehicles soon, if not now.
You're right, and especially since the past couple of years, we just haven't been able to acquire the vehicles, just like with everyone else, the scarcity of them and things like that. And even now, we got a message from the state that their program is behind getting vehicles, and you know, so like that, so we could be in another year of where we're allocated funds, but we just can't utilize the funds.
Okay.
Let me look up that real quick here.
I move to approve.
We're just looking up something real quick, Dean,
Oh, I'm sorry.
but we have your motion.
Right now, we have in the use is like 7,164, and then we also have allocated funds of 90,000 through the federal grant.
Okay, so there's money to buy vehicles.
Right. I mean, obviously the federal money's for new vehicles, but we, like I said, we have 7,000 left for that, so we'll be looking to, so if you can find one. So basically all this is doing is just increasing that. to kind of
I'll
reflect.
second the motion.
Any other questions? Concerns? Seeing none, I move to put it to a motion and vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. So moved. Item number 6, audit of bills. Jake?
I move to approve check number 13,881 to number 14,245.
Second.
Any other questions, concerns? Seeing none, I move to put it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. So moved. Item number 7, review and consider for approval the 2022 budget amendment resolution number 3.
Okay, I'll kind of go through the various aspects of the resolution. The first major part of the resolution is that when we put the 2022 budget together, or approved it back in November of 21, both the WRPPA and the local 425 firefighters unit had not settled their contracts, and subsequent to the adoption of the budget, those contracts were settled. Also, in addition, the council approved a cost of living adjustment for non-union employees. So basically, what this is doing is just accounting for those wages, taking it out of contingency, and then putting in the various operating accounts that account for that wage increase. Also, in addition, into the EMS fund, if you recall, earlier this year, when we adopted the 2 new EMS contracts with the city of Nakusa and the town of Port Edwards, those funds were going to be utilized to fund the final position in the 11th tier, because they had 11th tier, but they only hired 2 of the 3. And basically those contract monies were gonna go to fund that third position on the 11th tier, and so that's reflected in here. And also from the state of Wisconsin, we get various EMS funding for various support and training, and it's just reflecting the receipt of those funds and appropriating it through the grant expenditure account for that.
So those are all additions that were added to the account?
Correct. The grants and donations fund, this is, kind of each year we get various grants and donations for specific purposes, and basically all this is doing is just recognize those revenues and appropriating those money for the specific expenditure account, and this is the way we track so that we can ensure that it's being used for its intended purpose, and that's just reflected in those accounts. The CCA fund, that's just the cost of living adjustment for that fund, and in the capital improvements, you'll see fire station renovation, $1,943,000, and fund balance applied. And when the carryover resolution was done early in the year, I forgot to add in the unspent bond proceeds that we received in 2021 because it's a multi-year project, so that's just a carryover of those unspent bond proceeds to finish the project.
Questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2022 budget amendment resolution number 3.
I'll second. Any other questions or concerns? Seeing none, put it to vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Item number 8, 2023 budget discussion.
Okay, just kind of give you an update on the status of the budget. Right now, all departments have submitted their budgets. I've compiled those, and so tomorrow I'll be issuing a draft of those departmental budgets to the council and the department heads and to the mayor, so you can start kind of going through those and seeing those. What I really wanted to discuss tonight was kind of the process of how this committee and the council wants to kind of go through reviewing the budget. This next couple weeks, I'll be putting everything together and kind of issuing a budget summary to see where we're at. And so, in years past, we'll be doing some internal review over the next couple weeks, kind of go through those. Any changes that we make, I'll summarize those and communicate those to the council so you can reconcile to the draft you're getting now. So if we make any changes internally, you'll be made aware of those. But also it affords the council time to kind of review those and come up with their own questions and things like that. I guess for the finance committee, historically, the finance committee has met with some of the major departments, and then, and I guess my question is do we wish to kind of continue that and schedule those department meetings, and we can start set those up, so like, historically, street department, police, fire, library, and some of the larger budgets, and plus then we usually had one for any of the other questions for some of the smaller operating budgets, if there were any. And it's kind of, over the years, we've kind of done it differently. It's always kind of been at what, the finance committee, what their wishes were in reviewing the budget. So I guess that's my question. Or do we kind of want to just handle those questions, or, can get questions to us, and we can communicate those to the department heads, and we can kind of, answer those as we go along. I guess I just would like to hear the thoughts of the committee on that.
Go ahead.
I would like to see at least the bigger departments come back to finance, and then the next question is because of the timing of this, are we gonna wanna start scheduling some extra meetings?
Yes, and that was gonna be the thing, is let's say, okay, so what we can do is, I can work with the mayor's office and kind of start to schedule out those, some of those meetings, and maybe have, Emily maybe reach out and kind of schedule some of those additional finance committee meetings, and I think we can work with that, as far as like, usually I think last year we did a lot of the Tuesdays in October. I think that's what we did last year, Tom, is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
But one thing I would like to, because what I heard last year, from the members that aren't on the finance committee, I would kind of like to see if there's interest in scheduling maybe a committee of the whole meeting, like maybe even like October 4th, to kind of, once we have that picture, to kind of have a committee of the whole discussion on, you know, this is what the budget's looking like, here are some of the options, and have that larger discussion, you know, since ultimately it is the, you know, the council that, you know, ultimately votes on it. And I kinda heard last year that, you know, when we had that committee of whole, it was kinda late in the process, so I was thinking maybe we could have at least schedule one early up, and then based on how that discussion goes, you know, schedule additional finance and or committee of the whole meetings, and I just like your thoughts on that.
Do you have any?
I don't. If we're gonna do these with finance, through finance, I guess, I understand you can't make it to everything. But if you're interested, you should try to make it to as much as you can. I guess as kind of a summary, when we wrap this up with the committee of the whole, probably wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
Well, and what I'm looking is at that committee of the whole, October 4th, that's kinda like where we say, okay, here's the entire budget where it sits. And here's some of the,
And do you think
some of the challenges, and, you know, kinda having that, you know, it's.
Do you think we'll be that far, that early in October?
The initial, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we've been looking at it for months now, like anybody who wants to, and I do find that it's not super easy, I mean, but.
Right, and I just, you know, cause it's, you know, just last year, I just kinda felt that, you know, this, you know, the council discussion was kinda late in the process.
Mhm.
So I just was wondering if it, you know, it'd be kinda having that October 4th committee to hold, like, okay, here's where we're at, here's some of the challenges we're facing, you know.
Mhm.
But obviously, you know, in past years, we've kinda taken it through the finance committee, and then,
Yeah.
you know, and then it kinda went to the committee of the whole and then public hearing, so, you know, it's really up to you.
I would personally like to do that, depending on what everybody decides here. That way we can, you know, kinda hammer out some of the tough calls if we're gonna make tough calls. I know we're kind of doing this back and forth between the city council's gotta make the tough calls versus the departments and the mayor, and I think we gotta get to you know, a playing field to say, did we find any money? Is there any wiggle room that's been made in terms of trying to get some of the streets paid for out of the budget?
I think what you're gonna run into is what we're seeing, and we saw tonight, is supply issues. Cost of supplies are dramatically going up, so you're gonna see that in our construction side, vehicles are going up. It may not be as pretty as we hoped. But I think, you know, having that committee of the whole discussion early on, at least allows some avenue and option to shift if we need to shift, versus like what we had last year, which is kind of the final hour. And I think by having that committee of the whole, it'll at least give everybody on the council that opportunity to feel like they can participate more so, versus just the finance committee doing it.
Yeah, and to the credit of the finance committee, we all had the opportunities to talk to the different departments. And again, you know, I guess I'm just speaking from my experience. It's not easy to sit in there. You almost need to meet with them beforehand, one-on-one, and go through their budget and the line items and try to figure out what's what, because you can't just listen to them and get a big picture of, your mind might be able to, because your mind works that way and you do this on a daily basis and you're a part of it. But for us to be able to catch up and figure out what they're talking about and saying, you know, for me to say you need to cut that, and that is ridiculous, you know, and I'm not gonna do it. But at the same time, we're looking to get out of debt faster. I think that was always what this was all about. And I understand that the other way of looking at that is the debt's fine, you know, so, and that's really what the council has to come to an agreement on. Is the debt fine? Are we gonna take out more debt? Are we fine just paying it off over the 20 years and chunking away at the WWLC and the water sanitation department debt over time?
Right, yeah.
Or do we try to chunk it off faster?
And that's one of the main, you know, the big issues that's sitting there with the budget, and so that's why I'm kinda encouraging maybe having that committee level discussion earlier, so if, you know, depending on how that discussion goes, it affords you some time to work through whatever, you know, the council's wishes are at that time, or getting a feel for, you know, what it is. And it affords departments, if they have to adjust their budgets, time to kind of adjust those, cause you know, the public hearing will be that Thursday before the third Tuesday, I can't remember what day that is.
But we know there's gonna be a gap, it's just the size of the gap.
Right.
Gap, what do you mean?
How much short it's gonna be short?
11th.
How much what?
It's gonna be short,
The deficit, basically.
the deficit.
For the streets.
for.
The budget, and, you know, depending on how you
want to.
you know, cause there's.
So right now, you're looking at a bigger deficit than just the streets, is what you're saying, or no?
Well, I mean,
Well-
the big issue is, and you know, when I presented the budget projection back in, that was beginning of June, you know, with the assumption that if you did not issue debt to fund if you changed the way you funded street construction, you know, it obviously created a deficit of, where am I at here? Had it here of, and this is based on a projection of about $1.8 million.
So the same 2 million that we kinda keep quoting for the
Right,
roads.
and I'm guessing it's gonna probably be higher than that, because since this, we had WRS increases and, you know, things like that. And obviously now material prices are starting to show up as I'm kinda going through the operating budgets. I'm starting to see that. So, you know, that's one big issue. The other one is I'll be doing some pro forma budgets, just to clarify, in the budget for the fire department is, you know, and I've been working with Chief Eckes, is that their budget right now is just reflects the status quo. However, I'm developing some pro forma budgets based on their request, and I do believe that's gonna be on the human resources, agenda, you know, for the 3 additional firefighters. So I'll be putting together some pro forma numbers on that. So that'll be another, consideration that we'll be working through. And then also, in concert with looking at the budget, I'm also gonna put together, you know, some of the ARPA requests, and so we can start filtering through those and looking at how we wanna prioritize those ARPA requests, you know, cause we do have about 1.2 million in ARPA funds that we can use for basically any governmental purpose, you know, after we got clarification. So, and we have the end of 2024 to spend those, but I think it's time we start looking at those, and, you know, and it could be, you know, as we're looking through the budget, how we wanna utilize those funds for the various requests that were made.
Yeah, and I agree, and I
What's
think
the-
from.
Tim?
Go ahead.
Yes.
What's the total number of the ARPA funds again?
It's about 1.2 million. The original was 1.8, and then we used some to fund some water main construction this year, and so we have about 1.2 remaining. And so, you know, we reached out earlier this year as far as requests, and so I'll be putting those together, and then so that'll be another thing that we'll be looking at as far as, you know, in concert with the budget. And so that if we make any decisions, then we can just incorporate those right into the budget with the ARPA funding source.
Yeah, and for me,
And
without.
when were you thinking on the committee of the whole?
I was thinking like that Tuesday, October 4th, it would be kind of like our normal scheduled finance, so maybe we could have like a finance committee for regular business and then have a committee of the whole after that. I'm just kind of throwing that out there, but you know, if we're gonna have a committee of the whole before we normally did in November, you know, the earlier we can have it in October, you know, the better. So depending on how that discussion goes and where the budget's at, you know, affords us some time to work through some of the issues.
So would you try and schedule some of those department meetings before the 4th?
That would make more sense to try to get through, so between now and, we'd have basically 1 month to be able to get which departments.
Well, I would think police, fire, streets, and then typically on, if
Engineering with the public
we've done the
construction.
smaller ones, we've kind of bunched those together, right?
Yeah, smaller ones. Yeah.
And I think the smaller
Even
ones.
Even the big ones you could, yeah, depending.
Yeah, I mean, like usually we had
Want to
like,
meet for 2 hours or something.
yeah, we'd have police and fire the same night, and then we'd have public works, you know, and then we'd have kinda,
So you do engineering, streets, parks, the whole works?
yeah.
Okay.
And then usually the other smaller operating budgets, it was like, you know, it was kinda like on a as needed or a case basis. If you kinda wanted to, you know, if you look through their budget, you're like, oh, kinda looks fine, can understand it, you know, there was no need, but. And also right now, we have a new library director on board that came in on mid-August.
A couple weeks ago.
And she's working through the budget, obviously, she's new, so she's kinda diving into it, so we don't have her final numbers, but obviously understandable with just coming in at the nth hour here. So she, you know, I've given her some of the materials and she'll be working through that, so once I get that, I will obviously forward that to you.
Yeah, and she looks forward to meeting the council
Yes.
and the committee to discuss it, and.
Alright, so then how about who would I work with? You, in terms of getting the meeting set up? I know I gotta talk to each one directly, but.
Maybe Emily would.
I think Emily could.
That way she knows your schedule, and, you know,
Yeah.
And then we can decide who we can all fit into how many
Yeah.
meetings.
Yeah.
try to get
I
that
can
through.
give you a call and we can get that figured out.
Yeah.
Okay, alright.
Get some dates.
That way we can get going. And like I said, tomorrow I will, I'll email the departmental budgets, but does everyone want a hard copy? Cause sometimes then you can kinda.
Mhm. Yeah.
All right.
Notes and stuff.
I think so.
I will put a hard copy also in all the automatic boxes, cause that's, you can make notes then, it's a little bit easier, but
Okay.
I will get that to you tomorrow.
I need to check my mailbox. Do you have any other questions?
I think that's.
Dennis?
Mr. Chair, Tim, when you, present these budgets, are you gonna also have like the percentages on that from, you know, what last year's and this year, maybe outline it with red if it's, you know, percentages is high or?
Yeah, basically what I do.
Something to catch your eye is what I'm looking at here.
Right. And what it is that the Departmental Summaries is like, everyone kind of uses our Munis accounting software to build a budget, but it does not generate a user-friendly report. So basically what I have Excel spreadsheets that they then, once they build their budget, then they incorporate that and then put any budget highlights, you know, anything they want to point out in their budget. But that'll have, what it has is 3 years of actual. So it'll have 2019, 2020, and 21 actual expenditures for each budget line item. Then it also has the 2022 budget, 2023, and then it has then a percentage increase or decrease both for wages and benefits, operating expenditures, and then total department budget. So those are all enumerated on that. And you know, I try to make it as user-friendly to kind of go through and make it, you know, nice.
So then somewhere on that sheet there, does it basically show you how much more you're asking for?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
I mean, I'm just looking at where you can spot it. I think most people are gonna say, well, how
Right.
come we're up so high?
Right, no, it has a comparison of
You
the
know
21
why.
budget to the 22, and the increase and decrease for each
Yeah.
budget line item, and also totals.
Trish,
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Thank you.
yeah.
You'll see it when you get it, and if you have any questions. Plus also, I do an index, where you know what page to find like the finance, but on that index, I also have a summary of just total budget and increase in percentage, so there's a real easy sheet.
Well,
where-
it's similar than what you handed us a couple months ago. then.
So, yeah, so it shows all the changes and the percentage change, so.
Questions? Dean? You're
I'm good.
Alright, so in the end, this is a discussion and we have our job set out for us, we don't need to make any motions or anything on anything.
Correct.
Correct. So, and it is, I guess the question is everyone comfortable with October 4th, to have a committee of the whole?
So October 4th is the day of our next
Yep.
finance meeting, so
Yes.
we'll plan on having a meeting after that, if everything works out.
That'd be perfect.
Now, Dean, you're good with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, actually, Dean is the one that has to call it, so.
I'm the other one to call it.
Yeah. Alright, so,
I'll check with you first, don't worry.
sounds good. Alright, well, then, item 9, set next meeting date would be October 4th.
Wanna do 5 o'clock or you wanna meet earlier than that?
Well, we're probably gonna wanna meet a little earlier. This one switched to 4,
Mhm.
not sure if that was what Dean set up.
Yep.
And it's working okay for me because I'm laid up a little bit. And I
So
think it would
4
be
o'clock?
better for us to meet
Okay.
earlier if it's okay with Dean and Jay.
It's fine with me.
4 o'clock,
Four
Dean?
finance and
Okay.
5
Okay.
committee of the whole.
Yeah.
4 finance, 5 committee of the whole.
Assuming we're out in an hour, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can see what the agenda was.
Oh, yeah, we can
Yeah.
see, maybe you don't need an
And
hour
if
yet.
not, as long as we notice the committee of the whole at 5, you can
Okay.
meet
Yeah, you
anytime
can-
after
yeah.
that.
Right.
Okay.
So,
then
yeah,
let's
okay,
plan
That's
on
the
that.
conclusion of the finance and property.
Right, okay. and
But
then-
no sooner than 5, is that how we want
Right,
it?
yeah.
Yeah, and then Mayor Blazer and I will
You got it.
work together to set up meetings.
Yep, get it
Okay,
up tomorrow.
I think that'll work, and
Okay.
like I said, all good.
Let me know, Matt, I'd be happy to go on some of those too.
Yeah, well, everybody will know about them. We'll send it out to everybody so they can.
It'll be finance, it'll technically be a finance meeting with the budget.
The departmental ones.
Yeah.
Okay. Item number 10, adjournment.
So moved.
Well, I'll move it second. Or, all those in
Dean,
favor say aye.
sorry.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. So moved.
Dean, did
Thank you,
you send-
everybody.
Dean, did